My name's Kyle Hand. My title is statewide game bird specialist with Texas Parks and Wildlife. And what that is in the small game program, there are multiple program leaders, like the turkey program leader, waterfowl program leader, etc. And so my role is to assist them in getting conservation done on the ground. You hit the nail on the head saying subspecies. They are all wild turkeys, meaning that they can all interbreed. And so the difference is mostly behavioral with a little bit of, physiological difference as well. Easterns are generally the bigger of the subspecies. They're generally found in eastern Texas. Rios are going to be a little bit smaller of a subspecies, but Rios vary how they look. Their subspecies name is intermedia because they can look like a Merriam's, they can look like an Eastern. So Easterns are real chestnut colored, a lot darker. Merriam's on the other extreme are very white on the tail fan and on the tail coverts. And then Rios are anywhere in between. So we get pictures all the time. I shot an Eastern in Central Texas. No, it's not an Eastern in Central Texas. It's a Rio, but it does look more Eastern. And so a little bit of physiological differences. Rios behaviorally are tied to water, especially in those roosts, looking for roost sites. They're tied to water because their roost sites are tied to water. Whereas Eastern, they'll be in one tree one night, another tree another night, where Rios generally, not all the time, they're going to come back to a specific drainage to roost at night. And then Merriam's are mountain birds. They're, still tied to water, but they're like little feathered elk. The reason why we put turkeys on the ground is to eventually be able to have a huntable, sustainable population. Now, we still have huntable, sustainable populations of Easterns in East Texas. Rios, if it rains, Rios almost come out of the ground. In like the country that we're in here today, here in Central Texas, it just add a little water. It's kind of like ramen. and poults come out of the ground. So in East Texas, one of the biggest issues we have is those small isolated populations. And, when you look at the Texas-Louisiana border, you look at western Louisiana and you look at eastern Texas, and there's not that much difference. But western Louisiana still has that high connectivity to other populations. And so the reality is we're on the periphery of that species or that subspecies there. And so that may be a factor, but our end goal with these restorations is to provide hunting opportunity. But until then, we're going to be happy with hearing gobbles in East Texas. So there are studies that show, 25 to 30% gobbler harvest is possibly sustainable. Now there's some new data coming out that's saying that maybe those historical numbers are too high. But in Texas, so we get a lot of our harvest data based off our small game program survey, that as well as banding data. And so what we've seen in Texas, like harvest is not an issue, especially when you're talking about Rios. Harvest is so low, it's under 10%. Even in South Texas, I think it was even less than 4% of gobblers on the landscape are getting harvested. And so from our data, that's harvest in Texas is not an issue. Now, maybe it could have been over in East Texas. Definitely in the past it was. But in East Texas, we've got super limited with a super short season and a one bird bag limit in those counties. So we've really limited the harvest where we think it could potentially be an issue. So predators are an interesting thing. I'm hesitant to say they are the problem. Now, they are definitely an issue. Back in the 80s when raccoons were worth something and we didn't have a feeder on every 100 acres in Texas and there were a lot less of them, there was a lot less raccoon predation. Predators, as it relates to grassland birds, whether you're talking about quail or wild turkeys, they're definitely an issue. But they're probably not the issue that has caused the decline because wild turkeys have lived with predators for years and years, for all their existence. Now, that's not to say that predators aren't artificially inflated right now because of the amount of food that's on the landscape, But I think a lot of it can be fixed with habitat. But it's proven that predator management, if done at the right time in the right scale, can benefit wild turkey and wild quail populations. So because Texas is such a big state, I mean, it varies from east to west, north to south. But the biggest thing, if I could wave my wand and fix one issue, it's habitat degradation or habitat fragmentation, depending on where you are in the state. And the fact is, if we had more native habitats and habitats that were here 200 years ago, before European settlers, there'd be more of most wildlife species. Now, that may not be what's best for white-tailed deer. And we see that's not just in Texas, throughout the central United States, central North America, especially grassland-dependent birds are on the decline throughout North America. And that's largely due, not all due, but largely due to habitat degradation, habitat fragmentation, and loss of that native habitat. In East Texas, roost sites are not a problem. There's plenty of pine trees. The biggest limiting factor for easterns in East Texas is brood rearing habitat, and nesting habitat. So that early successional habitat for nesting, it's going to be like 3 to 5 years post burn. There's going to be some woody growth there, maybe some vines and things like that growing, so the hen can get nest on the ground. She's got to stay there those eggs have to stay there for like 42 days. From the time the first one's laid until the time the first one hatches, you're talking roughly 42 days. So that woody protection provides cover while she's doing that. But then as those eggs hatch, what's really limiting on the eastern side of the state is that early successional herbaceous growth. So native grasses, native forbs, things that produce seeds, because all those things attract insects. And those wild turkey poults, that first 21 days, they need as much protein as possible because they're trying to grow those flight feathers. Now, once they get 21 days old, they haven't made it, but they have crossed a big hurdle. But same, very similar, a little different structurally as you move into central and south Texas. South Texas, one of the biggest limiting factors is roost trees. So turkeys have to have these large trees to roost in overnight. So turkeys in South Texas are really tied to like bottomlands or even dry creeks that are able to sustain, little larger woody structure. And then as you get into the plains, the rolling plains again, you need that early successional habitat that still has a mix of some small woody stuff, lots of herbaceous habitat, and then that root structure as well. To understand stupor stocking, you have to kind of understand where we came from. And in the 80s, 90s, we did what we now call a block stocking, where we took a few turkeys, like in a county, on multiple different sites. So we may have thrown out 10 to 15 turkeys on one site and done that in 5 sites in one county. Through some modeling work at A&M, we showed that modeling work showed that it's most likely, or it gives us a higher chance of success if instead of doing a couple of small stockings, we find one place with really good habitat and we put 80 birds on one site. And so now TPWD, we evaluate potential sites in a 2-tiered system. First one's like a landscape level kind of umbrella look through like Google Earth, GIS. So we evaluate parameters like, does this place have enough open country? Does this place have enough, hardwood country? Is it in our focal landscape of where we want to put birds? Because we don't want to make isolated populations. We want connectivity between other restock sites. So once a place passes that GIS evaluation, we then move on to an on-the-ground habitat evaluation. That's where we look at things like management and basal area and things, on-the-ground habitat features that may support wild turkey. So then you get, if you're approved for that stocking, you pass both of those, then you're added to the queue of places, and then we wait on other states to provide us with translocated birds. So in 2014, we used birds from 7 different states. most recently, Maine had been providing a bunch of birds. Past Iowa's provided a bunch. This year, South Dakota and Rhode Island were both prepared to send us birds. So we've gotten birds all the way from Alabama, Louisiana, Kansas, Maine, Iowa, all over. Just recently, and kind of a big step that we've taken is that the PR dollars, Pittman-Robertson dollars that are brought from an excise tax on sporting goods equipment, in the past, that's all been used in-house by TPWD. Recently, in the past few years, we've actually gotten to work through some programs where we can provide cost assistance, cost share to private landowners. That's probably one of the big things we've done recently to be able to help move the needle. And we really hope we can grow that. It just requires a lot of education. It requires a lot of money. But that means that we can take state dollars and get it matched 3-to-1. And so it really makes our pocketbook that much bigger to be able to provide that on-the-ground assistance to landowners. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service administers the Pittman-Robertson or PR dollars. And so we have state dollars that come from license sales. TPWD actually doesn't get all that money. The legislature then has to say, okay, TPWD, you can have this money that you got from license sales. So when that gets apportioned to us, we also we're in contact with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we have what we call grants, open grants. So like the 124 grant is our WMA grant. And so we've said, hey, Fish and Wildlife Service, we would like to be able to operate and own WMAs. And so we have an operation plan for that grant. And so we say we're going to put this much money in, and so Fish and Wildlife Service can match that. And there are stipulations like anything. So when we fill out our timesheets or if we buy something at a store, we have to code it to a grant. Now, sometimes there's no grant to get PR dollars off, so we have to use just state money. But a lot of times, like for the operation of a WMA or the one that I currently work on, which is a game bird management grant. So all these things we have to go to Fish and Wildlife Service and say, hey, we would like to spend PR dollars on this project. They have to approve that. Once that is approved, then we can charge that. Then we can get those PR dollars as long as we have the stamp funds to match it or the state funds to match it. TPWD, if you look up TPWD Wild Turkey, we have a Wild Turkey page. Soon we're going to have a small game program landing page that'll talk about everything from species-specific stuff to where your money goes as far as PR dollars and license dollars. And then I'd always recommend somebody, if they're looking for technical guidance, technical assistance, go on TPWD's Find a Biologist page, connect with your local biologist, and have some goals in mind with your property when you go to contact them. And then they'll be able to walk you through any potential, programs that we may have or programs that other partners may have to be able to get habitat work done on the ground.